Hi, I'm Madeline, the maker behind Of Books and Hooks. Of Books and Hooks is a project that I've been working on where I just want to connect with like-minded readers and crafters and also provide some helpful resources to the people in my community as well as just supporting them. So this is a kind of test project. It is technically episode 1 of a video podcast type content that I am aiming to create just to engage more with everyone out there and to provide some useful tips, tricks, and insights from my crafting journey. One of the main reasons I've decided to go with video and podcast content is, as a crafter, I completely understand that listening can sometimes be 20 times more valuable than reading. So that's why I've decided to go this route. The topics will completely vary, but for episode 1, we will be discussing how I learned to knit. So if you know anything about me, you'll know that I started with crochet, obviously being of books and hooks. However, something you might not know about me is that I actually started with knitting. So I learned to knit from a family friend's mother, or a friend's mother, when I was 10 years old. And I really loved doing it overall, but I never progressed much beyond knit and purl. And I was pretty strict at only staying within a rectangular shape, which is very limiting. So for about 10 years, I went in and out of knitting. I would forget about it completely and then rediscover some yarn and needles in my stash, pick it back up again, and remember how much I loved working with yarn. But for whatever reason, it never stuck. So I actually kind of let it go over the years. That being said, in 2018, I picked up my first crochet hook and I taught myself to learn off of YouTube videos. It was something that I avoided pretty much forever because I figured that being left-handed would make it really difficult for me to learn. I think one person had tried to teach me crochet before and she was right-handed and it was a mess, so it just left a bad impression. Overall, I decided that, it was time to start trying something new. A friend of mine here in Berlin, where I live, decided to also learn, and they're left-handed as well. So we decided to learn together. We were going to self-teach, and for whatever reason, this time it stuck. And I can talk about that for ages, but perhaps that's a separate situation. So, back to knitting. For the first time in ages, I picked up knitting needles, and it was about a month ago, actually. And the reason I picked needles back up was because I wanted to knit a sock. So this is not the sock that I started with. It's actually the second sock. I didn't even make a full pair for my first 2 socks. Second sock syndrome definitely hit hard before I even had a chance to know what that was. But I really wanted to learn how to knit socks. I have no idea why. I saw a lot of sock content on my Instagram feed, and there was just something about it that was really exciting to me and felt like a really cool skill that I could learn. So I just decided it's what I wanted to do, and with the encouragement of some people in my community, I picked it up. So for the past month, I've been pretty much compulsively knitting socks. It is very addicting. I use tiny circulars, and those keep things going really quickly. So after I knit my first pair of socks, I realized that knitting wasn't something I disliked or that I couldn't keep up with because there was something wrong with the craft, but because I just don't think I had approached it at the right time in my life. After learning how to crochet, I built a lot of confidence in myself. And one of the things I'll say about knitting is that it's 20% skill, 80% confidence. What I mean by that is when you're crocheting, if you mess up, it's not too difficult to figure out how to go back and fix your mistakes. But knitting seems so much more overwhelming because your stitches are all live at the same time. So I guess I just always felt like the potential for failure is higher with knitting. And that's what actually kept me from progressing. So I really have crochet to thank for the confidence that I built in order to get to a point where with knitting, I felt very much as though I could actually take risks and read patterns and follow steps. So I guess I'll talk a little bit more about the process of this sock. I am a huge fan of video tutorials. There's something about the visual step-by-step that really helps me. And I found, or I was actually given the name of a tutorial through Simply in Stitches. My friend on Instagram, who goes by the handle XOXB Stitches, Brit, she told me that that's how she learned how to knit a pair of socks, and it really is a very comprehensive tutorial, which I can link below. So knitting socks with her, with this tutorial is like a 7-part series, I think. It was very step-by-step, so there wasn't a lot of margin for error or failure because someone was literally guiding me through. And that process just, I guess, really helped me overall. I knit a couple of socks by watching the tutorial the complete way through twice, and then I was able to just read the pattern on my own. And after that, I was able to pick up a pattern actually for a sweater, which leads me to this. It is covered in dog hair, and like most crafters, I hate weaving in ends. So this is my mini crop sweater. It's a lot smaller than me, of course, because it's for a friend and she likes shorter length, which was nice because it made the project go really, really quickly. And it's funny, I was told that sweaters are easier than socks, and I didn't believe it until I did it. I was infinitely less stressed out, and that's probably because I'd done probably 5 socks by the time I picked up this sweater. But overall, it wasn't that difficult of a project, and I think that's a really valuable thing to mention, because one of the things that keeps most crafters from expanding and learning and growing is fear, and a lack of confidence. And that's really a big takeaway from this for me, was just to kind of put yourself out there, and who cares if you mess up your sweater? You don't have to post everything on the internet. No one has to know you're even doing it. I chose to use it as a motivator, but having like 6, well, there's definitely an odd number of socks, but having 5 socks and a sweater after basically a month of knitting again after years was really rewarding. It's something I've always wanted to do. And it's something that's been really important to me over the past few weeks. So the reason a lot of my content has been very knitting tailored is because it's been absolutely crucial for me to skill build and to learn how to knit. It's been a huge growth experience overall. So I guess I can come back to kind of the general concept behind why I learned to knit, why I learned to crochet, why I taught myself these skills at all, especially because I think it's a really important conversation right now. While everyone is finding ways to invest in themselves and grow and skill build, it's something that's important to me, which is why I obviously launched in April my #SkillsAtHome campaign to kind of encourage the people around me to learn and grow and use this time just to develop themselves a bit, whether it's in external skills or internal skills. So coming back to why I taught myself these things at all, first off, it's definitely because I am obsessed with yarn. I've always been obsessed with yarn. I used to go into craft stores when I was little and just squish everything. And most crafters who are in a fiber space will be able to tell you that this is just I don't know, life without yarn. I think I would have an existential crisis, but it's what we love. Yarn is squishy. It doesn't matter if you knit or crochet or not. So I originally taught myself because I loved yarn, and I felt like knitting wasn't a good fit, but crochet might be. And then it turned out that crochet led me back to knitting, as I've been talking about. But I think overall the main message is to just explore creative spaces, and for me that's what led me to these 2 crafts. I knew that I liked the actual act of working with yarn itself, but it just wasn't the perfect fit. So something I would suggest to all crafters out there is definitely to explore. If you find that something isn't working for you, it doesn't mean that there's nothing within that space that could work for you. Even if crochet hadn't been it for me, I could have started with weaving with fibers or anything along those lines. So I think that's a really valuable lesson to learn about crafting and skill building overall, is that just because one thing might not be exactly what you want it to be, it doesn't mean nothing will be. So that was a big lesson for me. In terms of what I prefer, because I've had a couple of people ask me this, I tend to go through phases where I obsess over something, whether it's the actual thing and I'll make 15 cardigans or 5 socks or what have you, or the skill itself, knitting, crochet, scrapbooking, who knows. So right now I'm definitely in a knitting kick, but I miss crochet. I have a giant blanket that I've been aiming to finish for a year. I'm sure all of you crafters out there totally understand the work in progress fatigue. And every once in a while I'll go back to that and I just remember how much I love crochet as an act. So I think, you know, the answer to the question is I love them both in different ways and they suit different needs. And I think that's another major takeaway from me, which is the more skills you have, the more crafting things I know, the more I fill my toolbox with being able to help myself and calm my mind. And sometimes if a project, you know, even within the craft, we all have those work in progresses that we just don't want to do. They stress us out, they're complicated, they're not mindless. And so a lot of times as crafters, we'll have projects that are for mindless, I need to calm down, and things that challenge us. So I think overall, you know, I like to have them for different spaces and different reasons in my life. And so I'm really grateful for having both of those tools in my self-care toolbox and my creative toolbox. It helps to really expand that way as well. So I hope you learned something from this. It's been a really exciting experience for me, and I'd really encourage anyone out there who's looking to expand their skill set to do it. You know, there's nothing stopping you. There's no one judging you. If you need support, you can always reach out to me on Instagram. My handle is @ofbooksandhooks, and I'm pretty responsive. So you're always welcome to reach out and start a chat, and I'm more than happy to be your cheerleader. I just wanted to end this video / podcast with a little update on the other side of my just content in general, which is on the book side of things. So I just thought I'd end with what I'm currently reading, which is this book called Made to Stick. It's Why Some Ideas Survive and Others Die by Chip and Dan Heath. And so this book was suggested to me by my partner, Ollie. He's a product designer, and I'm in real life, I work in content. So I decided to pick this up because he was raving about it, and it's just really fascinating to learn more about, you know, the psychology behind ideas and why we connect with certain themes or ideas in products or advertising or anywhere really, and why some things take off and other things just kind of wither. So I'd really recommend that if you like psychology and you kind of like to know why you gravitate towards some things and away from others. And it just kind of felt, I guess, like a good match to mention in this video because I guess yarn was made to stick for me. But I hope you enjoyed episode 1 of this new series that is completely unnamed. And I really hope that you'll tune in for my next episode, which will probably be next week. Have a great day, have a great weekend, have a great life, and I'll see you next time. Bye!